Why should Americans care about what's happening in Ukraine?
Because it goes to a very fundamental principle of all nations, which is that our borders should be inviolate, that our sovereignty should be respected.
All nations? It's weird. I don't remember ever pledging allegiance to all nations. Maybe Jack can help me out with this. Joining me now is my friend Jack Posobiec. He's, of course, the host of Human Events Daily on Apple Podcasts. Jack, do you remember when you swore an oath to protect and defend all nations?
You know, it's weird. I remember there was this thing called the Constitution. There were a lot of people there. It was right before boot camp. You know, I was young. I was impressionable. I thought joining the military meant serving my country. We all make a lot of mistakes when we're young. But what's interesting about this clip is Jonathan Feiner, of course, he's the deputy under Jake Sullivan. This guy, one of those people, by the way, completely obsessed with Ukraine. Same with Sullivan, same with Tony Blinken. Feiner, totally involved in the dossier. Total true believer, doesn't even realize how his comments are going to be construed in the United States for the domestic audience, where we hear, wait a minute. So the Biden administration all of a sudden says, borders are inviolate, and we must respect the sovereignty of them. Like, wait. You guys that are allowing the human traffickers and the kids bringing the sex assaulters over the bottom southern border of the United States, all of a sudden care about borders when they're thousands and thousands of miles away.
Jack, this is a tangled web, and I'm an idiot, so I need you to unpack this for me in particular. Ukraine, there's all this Biden involvement with Ukraine. People remember that, the Hunter Biden stuff. And then you have all these Joe Biden lackeys, as you just pointed out. They seem to be uniquely invested in this whole thing. I feel like there's something here I'm not seeing, but I should be seeing. But you're probably seeing it. What is it?
Yeah, so I actually had somebody call me this morning and say, Jack, you break this all down. It's like, I don't want to get too in the weeds. And I said, look, there's two ways you can go about this. You can go into the weeds and you can really talk about all the different think tanks and the policy forums and councils that people like Victoria Nuland and Tony Blinken and Hillary Clinton, by the way, back at the time, were involved in. You can talk about Burisma's funding of Hunter Biden, as well as their funding of the Atlantic Council, Viktor Pinchuk, another Ukrainian oligarch who's been funding the Atlantic Council. But at the end of the day, it's really as simple as this. They're being bought off. This is something that was unfinished business from the Obama administration. Remember, Hillary was supposed to become president, and then that would have ushered Ukraine into NATO and into the European Union. And then, of course, obviously there was a 4-year pause on that, but they realized, okay, they've got Biden in now, but it's all the same people around him that are in the State Department. So they're just going forward with what they were going to do last time. And it's really amazing to me that they seem to completely discount the idea that us getting into a shooting war with Russia in the dead of winter could possibly be any sort of problem at all. As you know, of course, Jesse, our ground forces right now are completely invincible. I mean, this is absolutely the right time to get into a ground war in Eastern Europe, don't you think?
Well, I mean, Jack, it's Russia in the winter. What's the worst thing that could happen to a military there? I mean, I wouldn't oversell that at all. You know what? Here's a clip of you.
Of course not.
Yeah. Yes. No precedent at all there. Here's a little video of the Ukrainian president.
Right now, all news bulletins and media are dominated by similar messages about the war with Russia and the inevitable Russian invasion, which can start any minute. We know there's a potential war threat. We are ready for it. But we are doing our best so our preparedness would not be needed. What should you do? Only one thing. Don't panic. Keep a cool head. Be confident. Be confident in our army and our Ukraine. Don't overthink it. React to things wisely, without emotions.
Jack, what am I seeing? Am I seeing a man who's confident in his military? Am I seeing a man who's confident that Russia's actually not going to invade? What am I looking at there?
Well, one thing that really makes, I think, a lot of context come clear in this is that President Zelensky in Ukraine is currently polling even worse than Joe Biden is polling in the United States. He's down in the dumps, maybe high 20s, low 30s on a good day. He's in the middle of his term. He's going to be running again in 24, the same way as President Biden is. And so they're both looking at this situation as a way to say, well, you know, we've completely screwed up the economy. We've completely screwed up everything. By the way, also because of COVID and because of lockdowns in Ukraine, which had violent protests in Kiev over these lockdowns. One of the huge things that Zelensky is very, very, very unpopular for, a guy who won, by the way, with like 70% of the vote. Now he's running against the former president, who's most likely going to run against him in 24. So you got a guy who realizes, look, let's go pick a fight so that, you know, we can talk tough and then walk away from it as if we're winners. But then I think he's now starting to realize, you know, there's a lot of people in Ukraine that maybe don't want to go to war with Russia, and also realize that, again, you know, there is a precedent of Russia, war, winter, things not going very well for anyone in that situation. And then realizing that, look, at the end of the day, he's got to live in Ukraine. Joe Biden doesn't. That's why he's got to pull things back from this, the way people in D.C. can go off with their hysterics. And by the way, you're seeing the same thing from the Germans and the French, who are holding a meeting in Paris right now with Russian diplomats and Ukrainian diplomats to say, look, guys, can we just talk about this? Let's cut the Americans. Let's cut the British out of it. You know, nobody wants to get shooting here. Let's just sit down and talk like, actual adults.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.